Greetings, friends, and welcome to the Art and Science of Awareness. Now, on the last Tuesday of each month, we invite researchers working on the cutting edge of mindfulness science to come and talk with us about what they've been discovering. I'm John Roberts from Living Well Community, the virtual library of live and on-demand wellness programming created and curated for you by Point 32 Health and its family of companies, including Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Tufts Health Plan. Now, I'm here with my friend and colleague, Tara Healy, who is the founder and director of Point 32 Health's Mind the Moment mindfulness program. And we are thrilled to be joined this afternoon by David Vago. Now, Dave has worked as a professor at Vanderbilt University, their medical center and their Brain Institute. He is president of the International Society for Contemplative Research. He is a sought-after scientific consultant for the tech industry and an advisory board member for centers at Harvard Medical School and Harvard's School of Public Health, among many other things. Dave, thank you for joining us today.
It's really lovely to be here and to kick off this great series. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Of course.
Yeah,
Folks,
thank you.
we want everyone to be a part of this conversation. So please do open up the chat and let us know your thoughts and questions as they occur to you throughout the conversation today. I'll be coming on and off camera as I monitor the chat. But for now, I will invite Tara to take us away.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Dave. We're so excited about this series. I'm really delighted to have you be the one to kick it off for us. And so I want to start with a question that I think is contextually helpful. And that is how did your interest in this practice start? Like, what was the spark for you that then ultimately led to a career choice?
I love this question. It's what really connects us all. And I was thinking about an early experience I had as a teenager. I was running a cross-country race on a rainy day at Staples High School in Westport, Connecticut. Everything's soaked. I'm soaked. There's muddy trails. So there's a temptation to mentally check out before the race even begins. I was a bit anxious. And I remember very vividly standing around wondering if the race is still on. Actually, everyone was standing around in the rain, wondering if the race was still on. Some of the best runners in our division were there, and I was intimidated. But I heard them complaining loudly, this is going to suck. The rain is going to slow me down, and things like that. And then I overheard one of the coaches saying, this isn't the day for a personal best. Just try to finish. And amidst my own anxiety, I think at that point, I had this shift where my mind just suddenly relaxed. And like a switch, my mindset went to, I got this. And just enjoyed the rain and the sensation of being uncomfortable. And with a smile on my face, I actually ran my best race ever.
Wow.
I beat my goal of 6-minute miles was like a big goal for me back in the day. I came in third place, I think. I placed ahead of the two guys that were complaining at the start. And I just remember that day vividly, and the insight, how the mind can both limit and liberate us. And just that shift, right? It really it developed into this deep fascination with the mind, how it works, how it shapes our experiences, and how it can impact our human potential.
It's such a great and relatable story. And I think, just this, in a way, you just like accepted the conditions because that's what was happening. And the resistance to what was happening was going to cause a problem, as it did for the other two.
Oh,
And
totally.
totally. And I love how you just saw that and just settled in to the discomfort, right? And
Completely.
that's awesome.
And I remember it so vividly because it did have such an impact on me. And then it led to a few other things. I took a lot of religion and philosophy courses in undergrad. Went to a 10-day Goenka style Vipassana meditation retreat when I was a junior in college. And I think just the practice then became very deeply transformative for me, because not just on this sort of mental and emotional level personally, I started to realize how the mind really can impact human potential, and it really reshaped my understanding how the mind works.
Yeah. So
That
interesting.
just
Yeah.
continued. And
Yeah.
honestly, like the levels of inspiration just kept sort of accumulating over time, where I, through the Buddhist and Hindu Vedanta traditions that I was studying, I was also studying modern neuroscience. And that made me delve deeper into the science of mind body practices, which have the potential to influence the mind on health,
Yeah.
healing, and well
Yeah.
being. So that's
Yeah.
really the sort of cascade of events that.
Yeah. And so I love how that one thing led to another, led to another. And then it's an empirical practice. You're like learning as you're going through each of these different phases and
Oh,
seeing the benefit that it's having for you, like firsthand experiential benefit.
100%, 100%.
So Dave, let's look then, let's like jump ahead to your research. And
Mhm.
what would you say are maybe the top 4 or 5 ways that mindfulness and meditation impact brain health?
Yeah, I love this question too. I really like just coming to essence and telling everyone and sharing with everyone what the latest research is showing. What do we know in the last 20 years? What have we learned? Um, I'll try to name each one of them very specifically and then go into a little bit of detail. So the first one really of how meditation and mindfulness is increasing or improving brain function and brain health is through decreased narrative self-processing. This is the first way that it helps, decreased narrative self-processing. So what does that mean? So meditation, we now know there's a lot of evidence showing that it reduces excessive worrying, ruminative thoughts about the past, or uncertain expectations about the future, feelings of helplessness. And this is supported by altering activity across multiple networks of the brain. We think about the brain in terms of networks, which are composed of different brain regions. And 2 networks in particular appear to be heavily influenced by core mindfulness meditation practices. The first one is the frontal parietal control network, and the second one is the default mode network. And I'll come back to the frontal parietal network. I'll focus on the default mode network. So first, it is associated with this narrative self referential processing. So that just means that it's supporting the autobiographical narrative that you continue to tell yourself about the past experiences that you've had or about thoughts of the future. Now, there's been a number of labs, including Judd Brewer's lab and Lisa Feldman Barrett, who were among the first to show that mindfulness practice appears to decrease activity in this default mode network. And it's also been shown to correlate with reduced mind wandering. And that mind wandering is often leads to negative types of self-reflective thought. This is also associated with repetitive negative thought patterns that's seen in both depression and anxiety. So the research associated with this network has been really focused on showing that meditators can decrease activity in the network, and that's correlated with less mind wandering and more or less self-focused thinking. So that's number one. Should I just go right into 2? Just keep going. Okay, so number 2, reduced age-related brain atrophy. Okay, the research indicates that a brain's volume begins to atrophy about age 20 years old. Unfortunately, we're losing approximately 500,000 neurons every day, even starting at age 20. And then after 40 years old, your brain volume begins to decrease by about 5% per decade. So that translates to about 1 million neurons every day
Yeah,
after age
doesn't sound
40.
good.
It's not great, but that's what we normally experience in normal age-related decline. So, of course, forms of dementia or Alzheimer's disease, you see even more accelerated kind of atrophy. But that's a normal age-related decline. It's when we forget who we're speaking to or where we put our keys. That relates to that kind of loss of neurons. And you most clearly see these changes in areas of the brain that are part of the frontal parietal control network. This network is uniquely described as the circuit breaker, or control hub. It coordinates all the activity. It allows for flexible switching or toggling between all the other networks supporting all other brain functioning. This frontal parietal control network is the master conductor. It includes the anterior or frontal pole of our frontal cortex. It involves also the anterior cingulate cortex, which is really important for monitoring. The insular cortex, which in anterior portions of it is really important for interoceptive or internal body awareness, and parts of the parietal lobe. And so all of those areas work together. And what you see often is that there's decreased connectivity amongst those brain regions when you have reduced cognitive flexibility or executive function deficits in older adults. And this network and regions within the networks are very active during meditation. So research from labs like Sarah Lazar and others have found that meditation increases cortical thickness and gray matter density in the regions included in this network. There was 2 recent meta-analyses of network analyses that of meditators, one that was done by Diego Pizzagalli, Matthew Sackett, and others. And I also worked with a team that involved Kirk Warren Brown and Hadley Rawrig. And we all found that across all the studies that have been done with mindfulness-based interventions, that there's increased connectivity within the network. And then between it and the default mode network, suggesting that there's increased efficiency in regulating executive functions or the functions associated with that network, and also modulating the self-referential thinking, that it's connecting to that default mode network and helping modulate the level of self-referential thinking that's happening. It's helping control that network a lot more strongly.
Yeah, it's so hopeful. I mean, really, and a reason to kind of keep at it, to keep a consistent practice. And it's like also what you're saying, these regions of the brain are in a dynamic relationship with each other, right? So that it's not like they're just functioning independently, but and these practices strengthen that connectivity.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the networks, you think of them as sort of in a modular kind of way, that because they work together, you want to see them being strengthened and connected to each other to support the functioning that each network supports on independently. And then sometimes you want to see cross-modal connections, so across the modules that there's connections, suggesting that there's a lot of inter-network connectivity or crosstalk. And that happens, actually, you see these sort of decreased modularity in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy as well.
Yeah, wow, really fascinating.
Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry.
Go, no, go.
I was going to keep going. So I would also actually add, one of the interesting meta-analyses that I was a senior author on recently found that mindfulness-based interventions have been most effective at improving cognition in older adults. And this is unique to older adults because it makes sense that if older adults are the ones who are losing a lot of neurons, right? They're having a lot more atrophy. It suggests that mindfulness can be a great way to help slow the progress of cognitive decline. So that steep slope of atrophy in those regions of that specific network, the frontal parietal control network, is decreased. The slope is decreased. So there's less atrophy in the brains of meditators. So again, good reason to meditate, especially as an older adult.
Yeah, it's really hopeful. I mean, for those of us that are older, it is. It's really hopeful. It's like an exercise routine for the brain in a way.
Oh, absolutely. And that relates to the next impact on the brain, which is number 3, decreased inflammation. We see a lot of evidence now that meditation reduces pro-inflammatory cytokines such as IL-6, TNF alpha, CRP, which is a cardiovascular marker for cardiovascular disease. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is it also has been now shown that meditation enhances lymphatic activity. which aids in the removal of metabolic waste. It's just a system in the brain that was discovered about 13 years ago that removes metabolic waste while you sleep. And now we're putting out a paper this week, actually, we're submitting it, that links meditation to enhanced lymphatic activity similar to sleep, suggesting that there's improved metabolic waste removal, improving the level of decreasing the level of inflammation across the brain, literally brainwashing, and in the good way, and
Yeah, yeah. I
reducing.
kind of think of it as a chimney sweep. Like just
Exactly, exactly. It's just like a chimney sweep, getting all the soot that's been accumulating out of your brain.
that is super exciting and really interesting that it's only like 12 or 13 years ago that that whole system really came to light.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just realizing how important it is, and why it may matter. Because if you think about as you get older, after age 50, 65, really, sleep starts to decrease in efficiency.
Mhm.
And that leads to more accumulation of metabolic waste. It's also a link to neurodegenerative disorders, things like Alzheimer's disease, things like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease.
Yeah,
All of these diseases are related to inflammatory processes that happen across the age span. So if you're able to slow down the progress of inflammation, from by doing mindfulness, well, you're going to stop the progression of age-related decline, which is normal, and neurodegenerative disorders as well. So that's
yeah,
what we're showing now. It's very fascinating kind of work in this area.
really hopeful.
Yes, exactly. So that was three.
Yep.
Um, and people have shown this with MBSR. Dave Cresswell has shown certain you can lower circulating levels of these inflammatory markers. Chuck Raison has found that there's a nice relationship with the amount of meditation that you do and the decrease in these markers.
It's
And
always
Melissa
helpful when
Rosenkrantz,
there's multiple studies, that are starting to show this.
so many, and I think Melissa Rosenkrantz is going to be on your
Yes.
on the series as well, and I'm sure she's going to talk about how meditation not only improves immune function but decreases these pro-inflammatory responses in people who have high levels of stress in their life.
Yeah.
So it'll be a great episode to watch with her as well.
Dave, how about physical pain? Anything that you can say about the relationship between practice and how it can mitigate the impact of pain?
Yes, of course. So that is one of the top findings that you see in the literature. Meditation, and the way I frame this is improved pain perception, but
Mhm.
also how I describe it as equanimity, right? It's improving equanimity with pain. Meditation fosters what we call a non-reactive meta awareness.
Mhm.
And that meta awareness is really awareness of awareness. So it's awareness of where our attention goes. And specifically when it comes to chronic pain, it's it allows us to be more aware of pain related cues, how we relate to pain related cues. This could be as simple as just pain related words like heavy or throbbing. Um,
Mhm.
it could be cues in the environment of just seeing someone lifting something. What happens often in chronic pain is you develop this uh, pathology of hypervigilance and avoidance,
Mm,
meaning that you're acutely aware and attuned to anything in the environment that could be pain related. And
right.
as soon as your perceptual system detects that, it could be under conscious awareness. Your system is then protecting you by avoiding engagement with it for longer than necessary.
Yeah.
And that avoidance is not it's a good strategy for regulating emotion in the short term, but not in the long term.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying because I think what it's really about how well, first of all, that we're not so conscious of the contracting and that happens, but also that we're learning to have more balance, that we can actually be in physical pain, but not be thrown off by it so much, and recognizing its
Yes.
nature is to change. It is to appear, do its thing, move. And that has been super helpful to me.
Mm. Yes, it's a, you bring up a good point about how meditation affects pain, which is the sort of separating it into the two darts, right? The two
Yeah,
arrows.
yeah,
It's a classic sutta that talks about one arrow being the physical pain, so the sensory experience, and the other arrow being the response to that physical sensation or physical experience, which is the emotional experience, the unpleasantness.
yeah,
And people like Fadl Zaidan have found that meditation significantly reduces pain intensity by at least 40% and unpleasantness by even more,
yeah,
by close to 60%. And that's what's interesting, is that there's this distinction that is made with meditators often when you ask them about pain, how intense is your pain? You have to be very clear about it, because the intensity of the physical experience may be very high.
yeah.
It's not that like they don't experience pain, right?
Right,
You
right.
meditate, you still know the pain is there. But
Yep.
if you look at the brains of meditators who are going to receive an acute pain experience, say thermal pain on their arm or leg,
Yeah,
the during the anticipation of that pain, there's no real activity in the pain regions of the brain. Um, and only when the pain experience is present, you see those pain regions actually light up even more than normal people who experience pain normally and kind of
or
fear that it's coming.
non-meditators, or
The
yeah, yeah,
non-meditators,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And then it perseverates. That's even
yeah,
worse, is that the pain experience lasts longer than the pain stimulus is even present. But in meditators, this is where the equanimity comes in. It's rapid recovery, and
yeah,
recovery time is the key to the healthiest model for emotion regulation. If you
yeah.
can experience an emotion with its utmost intensity,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine, as long as you can recover fast and not have it perseverate and cause a perseverated or
Yeah, yeah.
prolonged stress response, right?
Right, right. Yeah. And that's huge that the recovery is quicker in meditators. What are some things we can be doing in our day-to-day life or stop doing to improve our brain health?
Yeah, of course, sitting on a cushion is one of the first things you want to try doing. And nobody starts a practice doing 40 minutes a day. It's
Right.
really about, trying to weave in mindfulness into your everyday life, right? Weaving into the fabric of our everyday life, whether it's just pausing before reacting in a stressful situation, or savoring a really good meal, or just
Mhm.
reflecting on your values and goals using a journaling app or something like that. Using gratitude has also shown measurable impacts on stress reduction and well-being. So practicing lots of gratitude. And these are just daily habits, simple daily habits. You start small, and they can be micro habits. And think about, you shower and wash your body. Now you know that meditation can actually wash your brain. So through the lymphatic system. I think there's just the little things in life where mindfulness can transform ordinary moments into opportunities for growth and connection. It's
Yeah,
the
I love that.
Mhm.
And even, I notice qualitatively, what's the difference between being lost and perseverating or being where you are or being present? Like
Mm.
in those, moments, you can just qualitatively be like, what's better? I've
Yes,
been
exactly.
lost in a narrative of worry and just coming back and just you can see for yourself.
Yeah, what's better? It's a really good question to ask yourself. What's better in this situation, right? Because often when we teach mindfulness, we talk about this idea of non-judgment. But what we realize is that no, judgment is okay. And there are often times when we just have to become aware of all of our judgments and evaluations of ourselves and the world,
Yeah.
and understand that there is a better choice in which we can move in a embodied in a compassionate, in a kind
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
If you don't mind, something you were talking about the impact of meditation on physical pain. Of course, we know there's a lot of physical pain in the world, but there's also a lot of psychological or emotional angst in society. I'm wondering if these findings on the impacts of meditation on physical pain might, the mechanisms involved, might help us manage how we are triggered by events that are emotionally distressing or psychologically distressing.
Oh, 100%. So that emotional side of pain can also translate into our biases, our attentional biases. And if we need a fifth effect of how meditation affects the brain, it would be reducing attentional bias, especially when it comes to our emotional experiences. So this has been shown by Antoine Lutz et al., Eric Garland, myself. The data is profound that we often are plagued with these attentional biases of how we see the world. And mostly it's flavored by these kinds of emotional reactions that we have to the experiences that make us feel good, that we want to hold on to, or the things that don't feel good. Especially when it comes to anxiety disorders, there has been data to show that focused attention meditation or different styles of mindfulness can reduce attentional bias towards negative emotional experiences. It's helping us shift focus. Actually, what happens is instead of shifting a focus away from things, you're engaging more with difficult emotions. And that's what the data is showing. For example, Eric Garland shows mindfulness-oriented recovery enhancement reduces bias towards opioid-related cues. Individuals with opioid use disorder. Raish Gupta and I showed with anxiety that you can change your early brain markers called P1 ERPs. These are just markers of responses to threat-related stimuli that are emotionally difficult for people. And that really translates into modulating in early attentional processes associated with difficult emotions. So it's happening in these early stages of processing that meditation's having that impact before you're even aware that some sort of emotional experience or challenge is a threat to you, that your brain is improving how it responds. It's engaging more with, right? You're approaching these difficult emotions more than you were previously.
Mm.
You know, Dave, as you're talking, it's so interesting to me because you and the researchers you're mentioning, your guiding principles seem to be a lot around compassion and interdependence, which I think counters the view that at least some of us have of scientists as being, you know, aloof or somewhat removed from society. I'm wondering if you see a trend in the sciences towards something like a science of compassion, or were scientists always like this and we just didn't know it?
Yes, this actually speaks to the idea of spiritual health, and I'm just going to bring that into the conversation because there's 70%. There's one survey that shows about 70% of U.S. adults describe themselves as spiritual in some way. Over 40% of individuals just feel that they use spirituality in some way to help them with their health and well-being.
Mm.
The NCCH has now created a working group for spiritual health and well-being, and compassion is one of the biggest parts of that initiative. And it's actually one of the things I'm really deeply inspired by is the integration of spiritual health and well-being into this, what we call the whole person health model. And compassion is a central component to that. It's how individuals use compassionate behavior towards themselves and others to help with healing, not only for oneself, but for really others, how we connect to others, how we dissolve the boundaries between self and other. And this is a time of great polarization politically and across the world. And if anything is going to help humanity, it's going to be compassion. So I look forward to seeing more work, especially since the NCCH is interested in this. The International Society for Contemplative Research is also wanting to create a working group that helps the NIH find ways to understand the neurobiological mechanisms behind transformative experiences related to compassion. So very, very relevant. So thanks, Jonathan, for that question.
Beautiful answer, Dave. Thank you. Now,
Yeah.
Tara, I know you we're approaching time, but you had a closing question. I want to make sure you have a chance to ask that.
Yeah, I mean, I really was just going to say, like, did you get through all five? Were there a couple more you wanted to just quickly drop in
No, I think
Or,
that's it. We got five.
yeah,
So just to
okay.
summarize, we had the decreased narrative self-processing,
Yes, got it. Okay.
reduced age-related brain atrophy,
Yep,
decreased inflammation, improved pain perception and equanimity, and I
that's
threw
right.
in the last one there, reduced attentional biases.
Yes, perfect. Okay, we covered them. Is there anything else you'd like to say about your research that I have not asked?
I would just say that if you're interested in contemplative research, you can check out the International Society for Contemplative Research at iscrsociety.org. If you're interested in connecting more with my own research, you can look at contemplativeneurosciences.com. I share research insights, practical resources, and collaborations there. So, yeah, please stay engaged, meditate. You're washing your brain in positive ways. Yeah, and I really look forward to seeing more from you, Tara and Jonathan.
Yeah,
Thank you so
Dave,
much.
definitely. This was so fun. I'm just so grateful that you were willing to kick this series off for us.
Thank you all. Thank you everyone for being
Yeah.
here. Thanks, Tara. I look forward to connecting again, and Jonathan.